there was a lot of shame in that. I held a lot of shame in the fact that I allowed others' opinions to hold me back. So I was really happy to be vulnerable and share my feelings with them all. And you could just see them all, their faces going, uh-huh, I get it. I get why she didn't do it.
Welcome to Your Second Act, the podcast that proves that life doesn't have to end at 40, 50, or even 60, because when it comes to living your best life, age is just a number.
Hi, gorgeous. Welcome back to another episode. Now, I wanted to jump on today and record a short little solo episode because I think the last few weeks have been really a special time for me. And they reminded me why I started Your Second Act in the first place. So back on the 10th of March, I co-hosted the Reboot event, which was all about rebooting your life. A bit like that, you know, how we used to do it back in the day. When something didn't work, you just switched it off and you reboot. So it's about just paring things back, maybe getting rid of all those negative thoughts that you have and just maybe starting afresh. And it was such a wonderful day. I co-hosted it with the gorgeous Rebecca from AIO Wellness. She came on the podcast a few months ago discussing the event that we were going to have, and it just really worked out so beautifully. We had a room full of 83 women. We sold out, which was, I just couldn't believe that we sold out because I know how hard it is to sell tickets. You can come up with these amazing ideas of holding events, wanting to hold space for people. But obviously, if you don't get the people coming, it's not going to work. Well, I don't know what happened, but we had a waiting list. And I just thought, see, women need these spaces. They need to come together. But anyway, I digress because what the reboot is all about or was about, it's bringing together not only a group of women who are all in the same place and same stage in life, but we had a panel of 5 amazing women. 3 of them I'd actually had as past guests on the podcast, and they were there to share their reboot story, how they started, where they came from, how they did it, all to inspire the women in the room. Now, we had a few big names such as Mary Custis. Now, I loved watching her growing up. In all her shows, her theatre. She's a great comedian. She's written some amazing books. And now in her second act, she has started a menopause telehealth platform. So she really wanted to be part of the day because she actually went through a really hard stage in peri herself. So really wanted to connect with the women on the day to share her story. And also the fact that, yes, she might be coming from, quite a known platform as Effie, if you all remember her back in the 80s. And what I do love about her story is that Effie was big back in the 80s, but Effie has grown through all the decades. And now Effie's in menopause and she's got an hilarious stage show all about that. So I think it's great the way Mary has just grown her character as well. But I love that she's actually entered into a new stage in life, wanting to help women through peri and menopause. So there you go. There's her reboot. So she's come from a lot of popularity and fame and having an amazing career for 40 years. But this is her new pivot. So it doesn't matter where you come from. It's still not easy to step out there. So I absolutely loved listening to her story. And then we had Ren Fernando, who was the lady who came on the podcast, who started a charity called Relove. Just, what a beautiful sentiment of how she wanted to start this charity to help others. Just beautiful speaker. Everybody loved her. We also had Courtney Blood, who is a wonderful stylist and content creator who came on the podcast, has a huge following. So I knew a lot of the ladies in the room had come especially to listen to her story. She came out of a corporate world where it no longer served her. And in the last 3-4 years, she has completely gone and rebooted her own life. She is in high demand. She said, I can't keep up with the workload. So she really speaks to women in midlife about style, about how dressing can make you feel a better version of yourself. So I love her message, and her talk was outstanding as well. We also had beautiful Leanne Reeves, who was a past guest, who talked about her journey into midlife, how she'd lost 58 kilos. And now she's gone on to inspire other women to be healthy, that pro age is definitely a thing. It's not about growing old, it's about getting stronger, both in your physical body, in your mind. So she was so relatable to a lot of women in the room. She actually held up a pair of jeans that she once wore that were, my gosh, they were large jeans. And she said, I used to fit into these and they were tight. So I think when you look at her, you think, I can't imagine what you look like 58 kilos of weight on you. But I think having that visual, a lot of people were just taken back by that. But there she is wanting to inspire. And she said to me after, she said, I was so nervous. I've never spoken in front of people before. And she said, you've actually made me want to do more of this to share my story. So I was her first podcast and I was her first public speaking gig. So I was so glad that I was able to provide her with that space. So again, just, inspiring women, and that's what she's all about. Then we had beautiful Ross Antico, who decided after years of being a stay-at-home mum, she wanted to start working. So she started in a doctor's surgery at reception. She did that for a while, but then she has always had this passion about floristry and she decided to go and do a course. And now she's got a booming business where she's supplying beautiful flowers for the opera house, for yachts, super yachts, for parties. And she provided the flowers on the day, which were stunning. And she just said, which I'm going to read because each panelist had a little bit of a takeaway, and hers was, I had a lot of self-doubt at the beginning of starting my own business, but I'm genuinely in love with the journey. Wow. This is how we want to feel. And I really think listening to women's stories just gives you, hopefully, the inspiration that someone you could relate to her. She was a stay-at-home mum. She had to relearn, retrain, and then put herself out there to start something new. And I think this is what the secret is. It's like we don't have to have it all worked out. And that's what I actually said in my little intro. I said to them, no one really has it all worked out. We're all a work in progress. And my message to them all that day was, if you wait for perfection, if you wait until you feel completely ready, you may never start. So just trust the process. Have a go and see where it leads you one step at a time. And I am so all about that, because if you hold yourself back with fear, with shame, with embarrassment, whatever it is, and I was upfront with them all, I got up and obviously told them a little bit about how I started Your Second Act. And I said the one thing that held me back for 2 years before I had the courage to press go on that podcast was what people would think of me. And there was a lot of shame in that. I held a lot of shame in the fact that I allowed others' opinions to hold me back. So I was really happy to be vulnerable and share my feelings with them all. And you could just see them all, their faces going, I get it. I get why she didn't do it. So after the event, I had a lot of women who came up to me and thanked Rebecca and I for holding this event and how it actually has inspired them to go and do that course, to go on that trip on their own, or to really think about what is possible for me. And I walked away with just a heavy heart. And I felt like a bit of a celebrity, to be honest. I had women DMing me as well. And this lady shared her story, her heartfelt story, and she said, I've been suffering a lot, but since leaving your event, you have given me the hope that there are brighter and better days. Wow. So what I want you to realize is that I, like many of the other women, many of the women in that room, I started there. I was listening to people like that thinking it's great for them to get up and talk about their reinvention story, but I can't do it. I don't know where to start. So this is why Rebecca and I wanted to do this event. And in the end, it was successful. And I just feel so inspired to keep going and keep doing more of this because I feel it's my sweet spot. I'm really getting a calling for this. For a long time, even when I started the podcast, I thought, yeah, I'm just going to feel through it. I'm enjoying it. I love meeting women and hearing their stories and providing them with a platform. But I still didn't know where I was going to go with it. And to be honest, I still sometimes don't know. But since I've been doing it for 3 years, so many other doors are opening for me. And I've held now 2 midlife women's events. And I'm just excited to see what else I can do. So keep listening to this podcast because you just never know the inspiration you'll get from one woman's story. So that was a huge part of the start of my year organizing this event. And then I gifted myself a women's wellness retreat. I went the week after the event for 3 days, and it was the best thing I have done for myself in a very long time. I switched my phone off. I was present. I just wanted to be. I was around women I didn't know. It was in a nurturing environment. It wasn't overly woo-woo, but it was just holding space for each other, the stories. We did mindfulness, and there was one exercise that I loved. She said, close your eyes, and I want you to talk to your 80-year-old self. And I thought, okay, how's this going to go? Anyway, it was because the environment was very beautiful and quiet. We all just closed our eyes. And I was able to speak to 80-year-old Michelle. And I said to her, wow, what advice do you have for me? I'm 55. Sometimes I'm really uncertain. Sometimes I feel strong, but I sway between the two. And she just held my hand. I pictured myself holding my 55-year-old hand. And she said, keep going. You're on the right track. Just believe in yourself and know that when you get to 80, you're actually going to be a really happy person. And I opened my eyes and it gave me just this rush of love. And I just thought, wow, what a beautiful thing to do for myself. And every woman in that room had the most amazing experience just doing that little exercise. So I think sometimes just being, it really helps you to move into a part of your mindset that you don't give yourself the chance to do. We had a night where this beautiful woman did a sound bath, and I've never done anything like that before, just lying down with a mask over our eyes in a dark, beautifully candlelit room. And she had these bowls where she makes various sounds, and it's just sounds like water trickling. It was just beautiful. She had different instruments, and it was just so amazing how you can really just completely relax into yourself and let the music take you away. So that was even such a beautiful, special experience. The food, oh, well, I'm such a foodie that, of course, I was really excited about the food, but this woman made healthy food so good. It was tasty, it was colorful. There was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everything was varied and different. It was all, most of it was plant-based. Occasionally we had salmon. We also had some eggs, but it was just so soulful. So the whole time I was present. I never thought about my phone. I told my family when I left, see you in 3 days. I'll be fine. Here's the number in case you need me. But I didn't miss anyone. It was just beautiful just being on my own. The amazing Maddie who held the women's retreat did such a beautiful job. She's a 35-year-old young woman who just knew what to do to tap into what women are searching for. Ages range from 27 to 55, me being the oldest, and we all just connected so beautifully. So even though obviously I'm in the space of midlife, so I'm just dealing with midlife women all the time, it was really interesting being with younger women and listening to their perspectives. And I felt like my wisdom was able to help them sort of navigate different stages of their life. We had 2 young mums with little kids who had left their kids with their husbands to come to this retreat, and they felt so guilty doing it. But I said, I'm so proud that you've done this for yourself. I would never have done it back then. But they gave themselves pause. time to rest. And they were so excited by the end of it to go back to their families, just as I was. So I think as women, we need to be kinder to ourselves, give ourselves these little getaways. And I think doing a retreat, it's a bit different to going on a holiday or going on a girls' weekend away, which are amazing. But this was soulful. This was pausing. This wasn't, drinking and, doing all those crazy things that we like to do. It was just coming back to basics and just being. I slept so well. I didn't have to rely on taking possibly a sleeping tablet. I just left everything behind and I was present. So I've had a beautiful month of March. I am so excited about working on some other projects that are coming up. Rebecca and I are also, we've got some plans for the reboot in the future. We're thinking of holding another event towards the end of the year, but we're also thinking of putting something really special for the women who attended the reboot event and anyone else who would like to join. So stay tuned for that. But I'm all about collaborating. That was my word of the year, collaboration. So I've had another lady who's reached out who wants to collaborate with me. So amazing, right? All these doors are opening for me. I never, ever thought it was possible when I started this 3 years ago. So I just feel really ready to receive what else is coming. I'm going to keep doing the work on myself, keep putting myself out there, and keep pushing this podcast and giving a space for women to really share. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I really wanted to keep you updated on what's been happening with me. And yeah, I wish you all a great week. And I hope my little chat has maybe inspired you to take a step in the direction where you've possibly been holding yourself back. All it needs, my love, is just one step.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Your Second Act. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could rate and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to me.